It's been such a wonderful couple of days for all of us at Vital Smarts. We sure hope it has been for you as well. I want to ask if you would to stand for just a moment, and this may be a geography problem, but I'd like you to find somebody that's close enough that you can accomplish this task with, but do it very, very quickly. I want you to practice Vilika Kramer's vital behavior. So find somebody to whom you want to say thank you. And if there's nobody close enough, at least find somebody to tell them who you're going to go say thank you to. And if appropriate, you may add a hug. But all right, so 30 seconds. Ready, set, go. Offer a thank you. All right, let's collect ourselves or return back and then remember the additional hugs you want to give before you go. I want you to notice something. We just practiced a little skill. How many of you feel different than you did 60 seconds ago? Yeah, just a little tiny behavior. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but Emily this morning asked the question that for me is sort of the thesis design principle for Reach. To arrive at the edge of knowledge, put the best minds in a room together and have them ask each other the questions they're asking themselves. I hope you've been lifted by hearing Brian Wansink's questions, not just the answers, by hearing Albert Bandura's questions. His life has been a question. His life has been about how do you help people to self-direct change. It's been about enhancing our capacity to direct our own lives. I mean, isn't that an inspiring question? I hope as you've interacted with each other, you've been lifted by each other's questions. Those are gifts. Those generate thought. And in conclusion, what I want to do is just share two questions that have been on my mind. We started yesterday with the big question about cultural operating systems and how do you create human systems that respond in a robust way. But I want to end with your personal operating system. So these are the ones that have been on my mind. So through a variety of experiences, I've been brought to ask myself questions like this. What enables some people to change while most of us just stay stuck? How many of you know people whose biggest barrier to achieving something important is their own behavior? How many of us know? And for how many of us are we that person in many ways? So we see that, and it creates in all of us immense pain. I mean, I can see what you're doing. I know exactly what you need to change, but you're struggling so much to do it. So I've thought deeply about this question. More important than my answer, I just want to share that question with you. But I'll also share with you kind of some thoughts I have on the journey. For me, the problem is that while most pain in our lives is self-inflicted, you know what? I know that stuff happens. I know exogenous variables, things on the outside, create problems and mischief in our lives. I know that. But I've just seen too many stories where that's the case, where it's just this person's actions creating problems for that person's life. And if that's true, why do so few of us succeed at changing those very habits? Isn't that an odd question? We have all the motivation in the world to change, but we aren't doing it. I have a belief about it. And I re-encountered that belief about 6 months ago when my son Samuel and I met these two wonderful people. The one on the left's name is Zalmara. The one on the right is named Esperanza, which in Spanish means what? Hope. It's a wonderful name. And this is a family from a desperately poor section of Managua, Nicaragua. They live on, at least at the time I met them, about $60 a month. For a family of two. So pretty meager circumstances. Elmara has a little business where she makes baked goods, delicious, wonderful little pastries and cakes that she takes down to market and sells. Her daughter Esperanza has been working her way through school and trying to advance the next generation of the family. But as I was meeting with them with this Cause for Hope project that we've been involved with, I re-encountered this question. Most pain is self-inflicted. The research shows that one of the most important behaviors to get yourself out of poverty is not increasing income. It's increasing savings. Income increase is great, but if you can't create a nest egg, if you don't have a cushion, if you don't have some assets that you can hang on to, then you're just one illness away from being back in poverty again. So, Zelmara had set some goals. She said, I'm going to save $5 in the next 2 weeks. And now I'm sitting down with her mentor and listening to the follow-up conversation 2 weeks later. And he says, Zelmara, you set a goal to save $5 in 2 weeks. How'd you do? And I want you to watch what happens. Zelmara goes like this. She goes, She said, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Now I want you to get the body. She goes like this. She shrinks. Her head falls. She looks at the ground. She can't make eye contact anymore. This is a moment of crucial importance in her change process. So here she's one behavior away from starting a small climb out of poverty, and she can't get herself to do that one behavior. I've thought a lot about this, and my tentative conclusion about why we're so bad at changing when we're the barrier to progress is that the number one element, the number one barrier is shame. The second is skill. And this is the message that I think Vital Smarts is trying to send to the world, because understanding number two is the key to solving number one. These two are interrelated problems. Here's the shame issue. I believe our deepest fear is that if we fail, we are failures. That's the belief that's hardwired into us. So, Zalmara, did you save the $5? No. In that moment, what's happening inside Zalmara is not just, I didn't save $5, it's, I'm a failure. If we fail, we are failures. When our halting efforts to change fall short, this fear that we are failures is what creates the profound pain that causes us to avoid trying the next time. So you know what tends to happen sometimes in this cause for hope process? The third time I would meet with Zalmara and she would say, no, I didn't save my $5. She knows that question is coming. So in order to avoid the shame, what does she do? She avoids the meeting. And so she checks out. We hate that feeling. It's an awful feeling. And so that's how we start getting stuck. We get stuck because it becomes about avoiding that terrible pain of shame. The message that you and we are taking to the world is that we're not evil, we're not worthless, we're not losers, we're ignorant. Isn't that a great message? Yeah, I'm not bad, I'm stupid. And there's a difference. If we could help people understand you're just an idiot, that's all you are, that's a fixable problem. It's great news, and we're all idiots together. And that's something that we can do something about. The crucial factor in all change is not nobility, but knowledge. There's enough nobility in all of us. We have higher motives. We have aspirations. We have good things that we want. What we lack so often is the ability to get there, not the motivation. We change no faster than we acquire skill. Now that sounds like a challenge to what we often tell ourselves, and I hope it is. So here's Zalmara. She says, no, I didn't save $5. And so Larry picks up on this. Larry, her coach, says, okay, no problem. And he starts going through reasons to save, and she says, yeah, got it. She says, I really do want to save. If you really do want to save and you aren't saving, then what's the problem? Motivation or ability? It's ability. So now he says, let's look at ability. So now he takes out her spending chart. She'd been tracking everything she'd spent for the past couple weeks, and all this is happening in Spanish. So I'm getting translations as this is going on, and Larry will talk to her, and then he turns to me and Samuel, and he translates a bit. And so he says, okay, Zalmara, I want you to look at that sheet with all that you've spent, and I want you to tell me what on that sheet is less important to you than saving $2 in the next 2 weeks. And she looks at him like this, and then she looks down at the sheet, and her face wrinkles up, and she stares and stares and stares for about 3 or 4 minutes, and finally she looks up, and with a sort of resolve says, Coca-Cola. And he translates, and I said, did I hear that right? He says, yeah, Coca-Cola. And I said, she drinks Coca-Cola. She drinks Coca-Cola. And with this kind of mixed emotion on her face, he asks her, is this more important to you than the Coca-Cola? She says, why would you like to have $300 in the bank? Why would that be important to you? Why is that important? And she says, one thing on this list that is less important is that Coca-Cola. She says, what I want is peace and a feeling of power. That's more important to me than Coca-Cola. He says, peace and power, that's more important? She says, yes, it is. And if you could have peace and power, would you be willing to give up the Coca-Cola? And she says, yes, I would. And then he did something absolutely brilliant. he asked this question. He says, what does that Coca-Cola do for you? She said, I buy it 3 times a week. When I've had a really hard, long day on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I buy a Coca-Cola to do, guess what? To celebrate. That's how I celebrate. And he says, great. What else could you do to celebrate? He doesn't just say, stop doing that. He teaches her a skill. He says, develop a replacement skill. If the emotion you're trying to create is one of moving from tired to one of feeling proud and one of feeling peace, then how could you generate that feeling? She said, after thinking for a moment, she said, smiling. Isn't that a great insight? I could stop and smile, and I could sit, and I could read. If I could smile, sit, and read, that would help me to celebrate. You see, what she learned is that most of the impulse problems we have that get in our way are habits we use, skills we've developed to change our moods. Most of the time when we have a bad habit, it's a habit we're using to change how we feel from X to Y. She wanted to change from tired to proud. And what she'd done is developed a skill called drinking Coke. And the question is just, could you develop a different skill that would help you accomplish that same mood change? Do you notice the theme here? This isn't about trying harder, this is about skill acquisition. And it turns out that new habits succeed when changers develop new skills, including skills to manage moods, like recognizing and acknowledging emotions. What Larry taught Zalmara in that moment was just learn to recognize the mood you're in and the mood you're trying to get to, and then practice a replacement behavior that helps you get in a healthier way over to there. Now, this isn't the important point. I'm not trying to talk about poverty alleviation specifically, but the general point that I want us to get out of this is that what gets in the way of our changing our own behavior, of our removing the self-inflicted pain in our lives is so often shame, because we believe the problem is a lack of nobility, when the real issue is a lack of skill. The focus on skill rather than will frees us of that. It says, okay, great, you need different skills than the ones you're practicing right now. Let's figure out what those are. It fills us with patience and understanding for ourselves, but also for other people. And it focuses us on the most potent form of influence, deliberate practice. That's what we're about. Sometimes the journey takes a lot of deliberate practice, but that's what it takes. So, that's my first question. My first question is, why is it some of us stay stuck while others make progress? And for me, at least, the tentative answer is that this whole shame process that comes about because of our belief that it's about will and about commitment and motivation is what distracts us from the real work of change, which is identifying and developing the skills we need. Second and last, we're almost home. You ready? Can we do this? My second question is one that's intensely personal, and it's this. You know, I still struggle so often with that. Why is it so difficult to master my story? Now, I want to share with you something that's affected the way I answer that question for myself that's a bit personal. If I were to hand out Nobel Prizes, if I were to look at the last 100 years, and it were up to me to decide who got Nobel Prizes, I would have given one to penicillin. I think that's a great thing. That's terrific. I think the general theory of relativity was a decent idea. But for me, the person that invented the spork would be right up there with the list. As I tell this story, I'm going to reveal some things that are quite personally embarrassing, including how I like to dress. So this is my family much younger. This is an outfit I no longer possess because it was outlawed in my home. But for me, the highest value in life is utility. So that's what's wonderful about the spork. If I could empty my entire utensil drawer and have just that, how would life be? You know, you wash one utensil after you eat, and life is terrific. Now, one of the challenges I've had in my marriage is I married somebody that doesn't agree with this principle. I married somebody for whom simplicity and utility is not the goal, but beauty. And looking at her environment and surroundings. And we've got along generally fine. There's been tension around the utility versus beauty conflict at times. But we've kind of managed our way through it until last year we finished and moved into a new home. And as we built the home, I learned that there were some new rules associated with the home. I'd gotten used to many inconveniences in the past that compromised my value for utility. But one of the new rules I had to learn was the dish rack must not remain in the sink. I thought sinks were for dishes. But it turns out that there's beauty and there's elegance in an empty sink. And so if you put a dish rack in there and dishes accumulate, that's ugly and it's messy. And so with some sort of personal challenge, I finally adopted and accommodated that new rule. The second was all appliances must be in cupboards. For me, easy access to the toaster is part of my value for utility. And for my wife, having it in the cupboard and out of the way helps you see beautiful cabinets and countertops. And so while it took some adjustment and adaptation, I finally accommodated that one. And then I learned this one: 8 pillows must be placed in order upon the bed each morning. I use 1 pillow every night. There's no utility argument for me in that. And it isn't just that they have to be on the bed, I learned. They have to be in a precise order, and they have to be fluffed a certain way. And so this took a little getting used to, and finally I adapted to that, and we made it there. Well, then this happened. Then I took my first shower. So I'm in the shower, and it's a beautiful shower because my wife was in charge of all the design of the house, and it came out just wonderful. It's elegant, and I love it, and it's comfortable. And so I'm in the shower, and I unwrap my inaugural bar of soap. And I soap myself up exactly as Brian Wansink predicts, right? After the hair, then I do the body. And so afterwards, I made a decision, a novel decision in this new house. And that was, where shall I place my soap? And I looked around and I thought, utility, right? For me, the most convenient place was right there. It's arm's distance. There happened to be a shelf conveniently built that was directly across from where the shower head hit me in the back, so I plopped my soap right there. And I thought, hallelujah, this is going to be great. The next morning, I looked all around for my soap. And it was nowhere to be seen. And I looked low, and I looked medium, and then I finally looked high. Can anybody see it? Yeah, now this doesn't give you a sense of proportion. Our shower has about a 10-foot ceiling in it. That's about 8 feet up. So I'm like here, right? I'm trying to get at that, and you finally get the swisher from the toilet and poke it out, and it pops up over the top and catch it, and then I can soap up and get this done. So it's up there. And the first thing that happened while I'm in the shower is this sort of bolt of anger shot through my body. It was for crying out loud, not this, right? But then I kind of worked my story, and got back to, and I took my shower, and I was done. And then I did what I thought made sense. I returned it to its proper place. And the next day I came in, it took less time to search for it this time. It was back where I'd found it the day before. And this time, the story stayed a little longer. I mean, I was frustrated, and I'm thinking, all that I've done, and all I've sacrificed, and all I've accommodated, and the pillows, and the sink, and the countertops, and I've given so much to this woman, and then eventually, I know this story splits the audience, and so I'm sensitive to that fact. I want you to be aware. But I got the story down, but I also thought there's a principle here. There's a principle, and I'm going to fight for it. I deserve some autonomy in my life. And somebody else believed I didn't. I'm telling you, folks, the third morning when that happened, in my mind I'm thinking, I am oppressed. I shall throw off the shackles of my oppressor. It was a holy war, right? All I could think of, I was just consumed with this rage and anger and it's soap, for crying out loud. But the story I'd wrapped around the soap was so enormous and so toxic and so enraging. I really saw her as the domestic equivalent of Pol Pot. That's who this woman was. And I had a strategy to respond to Pol Pot that was appropriate. At first it was compromise. I thought, okay, because the glass door's over here, so maybe if it's out of eye shot, right? Now, this gave me the moral advantage because I could think I'm at least trying to compromise here, right? And she'll certainly see the gentle approach I'm taking, the accommodation I'm trying to make. Well, she didn't. And the next morning it's up there, and this time I was at my limit. I was there. I had this stone cold, hard emotion lodged inside my chest. And all the master my story stuff that I'd been trying for 4 days now just wasn't cutting it anymore. And so then I asked this question, why is it so hard? Why is it so difficult to master my story? And I discovered an essential little truth that I'd like to share. For me at least, what I found is that these clever stories are so compelling because they come with 2 embedded lies. And I hadn't realized till I was standing in that shower that those lies were embedded in them, till I was able to pull them out and I was able to kind of read the printing on them. The first lie is, I am true. The story becomes impenetrable because the subtext in my mind about it is, this is true. It is true that I've accommodated her in all these other ways. It's true that it's reasonable to put a piece of soap on that ledge there. All this stuff is true. And so it becomes so difficult for us to challenge. Is that right? Yeah. The second is this one. I'm permanent. This story is going to stay here and you'd better deal with it. So if that feeling of righteous indignation and that feeling of being oppressed and put down, under her boot, if that feeling isn't addressed, if I don't do something about that to fix that, it's going to stay. So I'd better stand up for my rights. I'd better do what I'm going to have to do here. Well, we all know that some of these issues like this, like soap, there's no truth in this, right? This is all about, sort of the story. And so I'm sitting here in the shower, and I'm trying to work on this. And I realized that until I acknowledge that I'm starting to believe the story is true and it feels permanent, still I challenge that I can't escape, that I'm stuck here, and all we're going to have is conflict about an incredibly unimportant issue. This isn't a crucial conversation. This is as trivial as they come. And as soon as the story started to soften in me, I started seeing other potential solutions. The question for me is, how do you get the story to soften? How do you get it to soften? The question for me in that moment is, where can I find the grace to suspend and challenge a story rather than react to perceived abuse? Well, one answer that all of us work on is just trying to answer the question, what do I really want? What do I really want? What's really important to me? Is what's really important to me the location of the soap or something else? But for me in that moment, I asked a different question. It wasn't about motive. The question I asked is, who is she really? Because I had a picture of her in my mind. It was Pol Pot in a dress. Not a pretty picture. And as I sat there and I said, who is she really? An image conjured itself in my mind. And it was when we finished unpacking the boxes the first day in the new house. And she grabbed me by the elbow and she escorted me into our bedroom. And she showed it to me. And we looked in there and we thought of the next 20, 30 years that we'd have in this place. And it was wonderful. It was beautiful. And it was the way it was because of who she is. That's who she is. She's a person that's creating a place for our family. And she wants it to be a place of peace and order and love. And I began remembering other things about her. And the picture in my mind changed from Pol Pot to Grenny. And I saw this image of a person that I adore. And my heart melted. And that little stony cold thing softened. And suddenly there was a new location for the soap. And I felt fine about it. And it works, and it's stayed there ever since. So what are we about? I think what we're about here is sharing questions. And the bigger the questions we ask, the more it'll call forth from all of us. I hope in the last 2 days what you've gotten is bigger questions about how to create organizations that are civil, mission-driven, meaningful, that accomplish important things, that change the lives of its employees. But I also hope you've been blessed as you've been around other people who share your journey for creating a personal operating system that helps you to accomplish and achieve the life that you really want. We love you. We absolutely love you. We admire you. We're honored to be part of your life, and we hope you felt that from us in the last 2 days. Good luck. Thank you.